in South Florida, Central Florida. Just a couple of announcements. Sometimes people wonder where they can ask questions besides the Tuesday talk. We have put the pictures of committee chairs and the committee members in the Oaks, including the board members and our names. And you can use the directory to contact us, phone numbers, email, to ask us questions so that we can get an answer if we can. Sometimes we don't know, but we'll try to find out. So please contact committee members or any board of directors. Also attend the Tuesday, not only Tuesday talk, but dish the dining, maintain with maintenance, and the housekeeping. Jesse would like some attendance because maybe one or two would only are showing up at his get-together. Those are good times to ask, the director questions. And I believe In the Know with RO is this afternoon, is it not? Tomorrow, okay, tomorrow. So that's a good time to ask questions also. And for example, I was asked about safety with the machine, that AED over there. Does anyone know how to use it? And so he was wondering if we would have a training class on an AED. And from what I understand from Brant, that there's scheduled for the staff a training, so if anybody wants to participate in that, they may be able to do that. We'll more on that later as we get the time, date, and place.
And the forum.
And
the forum.
And the forum. There's another opportunity to ask questions of the directors. So I know there's a lot of people that aren't shy, but if you don't want to do it in an open setting like this, contact your individual director or the committee members, and ask a question. We're thinking about having an opportunity in the Oaks to ask a question, and then we can respond in the Oaks too. So we're working on that too. And with that, I would like to ask Andrea to step up. She's got an important announcement.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We are going to do groundbreaking. I know we've already broken ground, but we're going to have a ceremony about it, okay? It's going to be on Wednesday, March 2nd, which is a week from tomorrow. And it will be at 3:30 in the afternoon. It'll be a whole community celebration. We'll have a little ceremony, and then we'll retire to the breezeway, have a little entertainment, speeches maybe. But Ricky said there'd be refreshments, so come and enjoy. Probably we'll be able to toast to the new building. One of the things we will be doing is burying a time capsule. And so I have put cards in both lobbies. There's a little stack of cards and a little tray to put them in. I'm asking everybody to write just something that is your favorite thing about Regency Oaks. It might be your friends. It might be a dessert you really like. You can go wherever you want and just use your imagination. But write something down, and those cards will go into the time capsule. And then the time capsule will be buried so that future ROs will know what we liked about it and see if they still have those things. Just a way for everybody to be part of the whole process of building our new addition. Okay, any questions?
How long will it be buried?
I don't know yet. Do we have any idea?
We haven't really come up with that yet.
If you got an idea, let us know.
50 years.
We'll figure something out. But probably longer than any of us will still be here. We'll let it go that way, okay? Any other questions? All right, so fill out the cards. You don't have to sign them. You can do more than one if you want. But let's fill up that. No, it's a stainless steel tube. It's really cool. Betsy got it, and it's ready to go. And we will have a good time with it, okay?
Thank you, Andrea. Your turn.
All right,
All right.
thank you. I'll let you can just hold on to this, you can pass the mic for us. All right, good morning, everybody. So welcome to Tuesday Talk. Thank you for such great attendance. It's a pleasure to have you here. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have some sort of a computer gremlin that has inhabited the center screen, so we're just going to go ahead with our two side screens. And Lou, if you can dim the lights. That sounds like American Idol, right? And our results. All right, so our very first slide, I'm annoyed at Tim because for the first time I gave him his very own slide for him to come in and share his update with us, and Tim's not here today. So I'm going to share a couple of things that I'm aware of, and we'll give you that part of the update. So the first thing that they did yesterday is they brought in a ground penetrating radar to make sure they can identify any unknown utility lines. Now, you might have thought that they would have done that last week, but they're a learning organization, so they don't want to make that same mistake twice. And so I promise it looks like we will not have any excitement here this week. And we were, Darwin and I were talking. So on the gas leak last week, every hook and ladder in the entire city of Clearwater was at Regency Oaks. And all we could think is, thank God there wasn't a fire somewhere in a mid-rise building because their entire fleet was at Regency Oaks. The primary thing that's happening other than the identification of all the utilities and making sure that we're clear on that is we're going to start to see the outline of the building will start getting trenched this week, and you'll see the beginning diggings for the footers that will carry the weight of the building and the foundation. So this week it's foundational work that they're primarily working on. They are also starting, and I believe it's going to be Thursday, it's going to be very, very noisy. This is the kind of brain-numbing activity that every single one of us is going to hear. It's the compaction. So they're going to start, they'll bring in the big pile drivers and start compacting that soil to make sure that we have a solid foundation. And whether you live in the south building or the north building, if you live 2 blocks over, you're probably going to hear and feel that compaction. So this will be sort of a loud day Thursday, but they do think it can get done in a day, weather cooperating, and the weather looks good, so I think that will probably happen as well. They are also looking this week to try to expand or reorganize their staging area. I don't know if any of you have driven by or walked by in the morning. What a mess. I mean, they just, they don't have, cars are all over the place, and trucks, in order to bring a truck in, they're having to, pull cars out of the way. So they're going to try to rethink that and bring some organizational structure to that. So we'll hopefully see some improvements there. So that's what's happening this week in the construction. And Tim will be back with us next week, and we'll look for him to update us as well.
Grant,
Yes.
what about the broken water at the arts and crafts room?
I didn't know the water was broken at the Arts and Crafts.
It's a sewer line, and they can't use the water.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so one of the things that does have to happen is the sewer lines are having to be rerun. And so that's as they tear those up, replace them. There are going to be some times when we're down with water. You're going to see the same thing happen with electric as they take out the old and establish the new. I don't know what that slide is. Okay, let's talk about COVID. Again, the numbers continue to be very positive, and every indicator is that we are moving out of COVID and finally going to, knock on wood, be free of this mess. This is the number of new cases. This is for the state of Florida. You can see back in the first week of January, it peaked with 427,000 new cases in that first week of Florida. We've seen a steady decline. This last week, we were down to 42,000 new cases for Florida. Next slide. The positivity rate continues to decline from a high of 31.3 to last week we were now down to 8.2. And so you know that where we're trying to be is under 5%. Once you're under 5%, you're more likely to have flu than you are to have COVID. And so that's the goal, is to get this back down under 5% positivity. Pinellas County is just a tad higher. We were 9.7, so about a percentage point and a half higher. And so we'll just continue to watch this, but the key message here is you can see it declining. And week over week, it continues to get better, and it's clearing up. I have the next slide that you've seen the Florida perspective. This is that's the slide after this. This is the number of doses of the vaccine administered in the past 10 weeks. And I think it's sort of interesting as you look at, if we were to interlay the number of new cases and look at how high it is, the more people who have a COVID diagnosis, the more people who are tending to go out and get vaccinated. As that threat becomes less, and as fewer and fewer people get it, fewer and fewer people are also choosing not to get the vaccine. And so there's a correlation that you think would be the exact opposite. You would think as many people who have had COVID, there'd be no one out there who would be interested in not getting the vaccine, but that just has not been the case. The percentage in the United States, or in Florida, who are vaccinated is still very high 60s, maybe low 70s. The data's a couple of weeks old, so I can't give you an exact number, but that's still 30% of the residents of Florida who have chosen not to get vaccinated. There was some discussion this week, maybe you saw it, about a fourth booster shot, and CDC has not made a recommendation on that at this point. We'll continue to monitor that and see what recommendations they have. Here is what's happening in the United States, just to give you the perspective and see if the rest of the country is following Florida, and they are. New cases reported fell 41% week over week, and the deaths fell by 10%, and COVID hospitalizations fell by 22%. Everyone knows that we really pay attention to the hospitalizations because those are the leading indicators as to what's going to happen with new cases and fatalities. And so everything that should be going down is going down, and whether you're talking about Pinellas County, the state of Florida, or the United States, all the trends seem to indicate that we are exiting COVID and that we may get back to some sort of normalcy. Next slide. What's special with Hawaii? Anyone know? Hawaii, we should celebrate this. Hawaii is the only state left in the United States that still requires mandatory masks. There's not another state anywhere in the U.S. other than Hawaii that requires a mask. So, that's an indicator, folks. That's a trend that we ought to be celebrating because this is moving in the right direction. The 2022 legislative session is underway. We are in week 6, and we are beginning to see some of what's developing and is happening in both the legislative branches. I'm going to talk about a couple of things this week, and then next week I'll come back and finish that off with an update on the other 3 or 4 bills that we ought to be watching because they're related to senior living and our CCRC industry. These reports also try to tell you where we stand in terms of FLICRA and leading age and where their level of support is for each of these. The tort reform has already been passed, and so that was passed a year ago, and the House and Senate have renewed, and it has gone to the governor's desk, and he has signed the continuation of tort reform for this year. Tort reform is really vital as an operator of a skilled nursing community like Regency Oaks, because what it does is it limits the amount of our exposure for negligence and wrongful death suits related to COVID. And here's why that is important. Those first couple of deaths here in the state of Florida that happened because of COVID, there have been lawsuits filed, and the average damages that they were seeking were north of $25 million. So you can imagine what would happen to any specific community, Regency Oaks or anyone else, if you got hit with a couple of $25 million lawsuits. It would bankrupt us. And so the state has recognized that, and they have passed tort reform for every claim filed from May of 2020 all the way through 21, and now it's been extended into 2022. So both Leading Age and FLICRA support this because it protects the financial interest of residents at CCRCs in the state of Florida. And here's all you have to do to think about it, because you hear me say this all the time. Every penny we take in and every penny we spend comes from one source. It's you. And so you don't want someone filing a $25 million lawsuit against Regency Oaks or any other community in the state of Florida, because it's not the owners who pay it, it's the residents who fund it. Freedom First is a new piece of legislation, and this is designed to fundamentally rethink the nursing home industry and whether or not what we're doing is sustainable. And that's the very first mission that the governor has attached to this is this, can we even keep operating skilled nursing centers in the state of Florida? And so he's established a blue ribbon committee to evaluate that and to come back with broad recommendations as to how sustainable is the skilled nursing industry over the course of the next 10 years, because there are so many debilitating factors that are impacting skilled nursing that it's a really challenging business right now. Here are some of the things that are included in the bill. The very first thing is, on top of the annual Medicaid increase, we're in a retrospective rate state, which means they look at our cost reports after the fact, and then they base the reimbursement on those cost reports. And so typically we get a 2.5% to 3% increase. On top of that, there is an additional 5% increase. So our increase this year is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 7.5%, 8%. And it's related primarily to the recognition that we have runaway inflation. We have all the things that impacted you also impacted nursing home operators as well. And so the state is proposing an additional bump to our Medicaid reimbursement so that we can continue to meet these unexpectedly high costs. And the second thing is $226.5 million. That's a lot of money. And it is designed to support direct care staff. And so there's a conflict right now. The House bill is saying the minimum wage for direct caregivers needs to be about $13 an hour, and the Senate is saying, no, it needs to be $15 an hour. So this is going to go to reconciliation, and they will settle on a number if they can figure out how to compromise. And what we're going to see is an additional quarter of $226 million dedicated to supporting direct caregiver wages in skilled nursing centers outside of the reimbursement rates that we're already going to see an increase in. We're also going to see about $15 million worth of Alzheimer's research and education because that's an emerging industry here in the state of Florida. And the baby boomers who are just entering senior housing, we know that this is going to be one of the real growth opportunities in the coming years. And so the governor is trying to do some preliminary work to make sure that the state of Florida is ready to address those issues as they develop. The last piece is this workforce shortage for skilled nursing, independent living, assisted living here in the state of Florida. And so everyone has seen what's been happening in healthcare. Hospital acute care centers are struggling even more than skilled nursing. 70% of the workforce in hospitals here in the state of Florida have left the industry. 70%. And so there is a companion bill that will support acute care centers as well, because everyone in healthcare is struggling with being able to do this.
Is this Florida is the only state that's having this much of a problem, or is this happening throughout the country?
Oh, yeah, great question. This is nationwide. There are, you may or may not know, but my daughter is a registered nurse, and she used to work for Advent. She was there for years. If she was up at the Trinity, and so if any of you had a hip replacement, a knee replacement, Jane probably took care of you. She's taken care of a lot of Regency Oaks residents. Jane, as an RN, was making $35 an hour. Jane just signed a contract. She's been traveling. She just signed a contract. She's going out to Houston, Texas. She's going to work 6 days as a traveling nurse in a COVID unit because she's developed a specialty area there. And they're paying her $10,000 plus all expenses for hotel and food and travel. And hospitals are doing that because they can't get nurses. I mean, it's a critical need all across the nation, and people are particularly our nurses and our CNAs, our direct care staff members. They're burned out. There's been a tremendous load placed upon these folks over the course of the last 2.5 years. They've worked long hours in tough circumstances, and you think about some of these nurses who are working in skilled nursing that every day they're doffed and gowned. They're having to wear the booties and the mask and the eye protection and the face shields and the gloves and the scrubs and the booties and the gowns. It's just it's a tough way to work, and so this is a nationwide problem. And Workforce Shortage Florida is designed to try to address some of these issues that are going to make it easier for skilled nursing home operators here in the state of Florida. First thing it does is it will redefine what is considered direct care staff. And so in the past, direct care staff has been limited to CNAs and to LPNs and RNs. This bill would change that definition to include our therapy team, our rehab teams, our dining teams, because in skilled nursing, all of those people tend to work direct one-on-one with our residents. Dining can assist with cutting and feeding. Our therapy teams are out with ambulation and rehabilitative, restorative nursing, getting people up and ambulating again. So that is the first thing that it will do. The second thing it will do is it will change how we come up with the standards for direct care. Right now, there is a state standard. It's a minimum state standard. You can never have less than X number of direct care staff per resident day. This is going to change it to make it based upon the level of care and the needs assessment that we do in care planning. So if Mrs. Jones is in our building, we actually sit down and talk about what does Mrs. Jones need? How many hours of therapy this week? How many hours of turning? How many hours of assistance to the bathroom? And so we establish what that care level is, and then we can staff rather than staffing to some sort of mandatory guidance that may or may not be helpful. We actually will staff according to what the needs are. The weekly average of direct care staff is going to change. Right now, it's 3.6 per day. You can never fall below 3.6 hours of care, direct care per resident day. And if you fall below it for one day, you have to immediately go on what's called a self-moratorium, and you're not allowed to bring in new residents until you can get your direct care staffing up. And what you can imagine that Monday through Friday is pretty manageable. What happens on Saturday and Sunday? It all goes to heck. And so what this law is going to do is change the definition from daily to weekly. On a weekly average, you must maintain a 3.6. And that's going to help nursing homes with weekend staffing, which is really challenging right now. The other thing it does is it does reduce the minimum direct care staffing levels. For CNAs, it's dropped from 2.5 to 2 hours per resident day. And for our licensed staff, it's going to drop to 1 hour per resident per day of direct care staffing. So Leading Age is a proponent of this, and FLYCRA has given a limited blessing for this. FLYCRA's position is that we're in favor of it. We think we need to do it, but it's a temporary measure. We need to do this until the industry figures out how to get everyone back to work, but at some point in the future, they want a sunset law attached to it as part of the amendment. So FLYCRA and Leading Age are walking hand on hand with this, and Leading Age is probably going to support a sunset attachment as well, although that has not happened as of right now. Okay, legislative update. Let's go to the next slide.
Grant?
Yes.
I got a question, a couple of them. On item number 2,
Go back to number 2, please, so I can see what that is. Okay, thanks.
item number 2, by definition, will that bill include our health center type operation?
Yes.
That's on the west side of the campus?
Yes.
It will?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Then down to number 3, the work shortage. Is there anything in that proposed legislation that would address any expense issue or any administrative issue involving our nursing schools like St. Pete College down the road?
So in this particular piece of legislation, there is not. This is limited to direct care staff only. So a housekeeping or dishwashers, those are not defined as direct care. Now, in terms of investing in education, colleges, the PCA development program, there is a separate piece of legislation designed specifically to attract individuals into the nursing profession and to assist with their tuition reimbursement. And I'll talk more about that one next week.
Okay, because what happens is that too many young ladies, or men for that matter, are rejected from the St. Pete College or any school like that. And then they have to go to a private facility, and that's more expensive and it's just not friendly. But I wonder if part of the problem, not the symptom, but part of the problem is trying to attract more nursing candidates to a public school.
Great question. All right, next slide. Just odds and ends. Gourmet dinner comes back tomorrow. There's the feature. We talked just briefly last week. It's a piece of Caribbean fish that Ricky has really done a great job with. I think you're going to love it. It's sold out for this evening, but I understand there are still slots available for the cycle. So you want to be sure to sign up for that. In the Know is tomorrow on the Breezeway at 2:30. This is our new resident orientation, but it's also open to any existing residents. We have it set up so that each department head has a table, and if you have a lingering question that you have, or if you just want to spend 5 minutes talking to one of our department managers, this is a great opportunity to pull up a chair, have a cup of coffee, and visit with our department directors. And then movie night returns Wednesday at 7, and the feature film is something called Queen Bees, and Ginger says it's great. So, one last thing, how many South Building residents do we have? I'm sorry, how many S Wing residents do we have? Okay, so the elevator is back. It was back for 30 minutes yesterday. And we've already doubled the time today. It's back for at least an hour. So I think they have this thing figured out. And so let's keep our fingers crossed and the S-Wing elevator is done. All right. Lights up, and Lou will open this up for questions and answers.